Coming up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, the leaders of Korea and 10 Southeast Asian nations hold a summit in the Korean port city of Busan to discuss ways to upgrade their diplomatic and trade ties. A travel ban has been slapped on the former vice president of Korean Air as the Transport Ministry probes into the so-called nut rage controversy. Plus, responding to a damning Senate report, the director of the CIA says enhanced interrogation techniques post 9/11 did yield intelligence that saved lives. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
It's New Friday, December 12th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. It's day 2 of the Korea-Asean Commemorative Summit, currently taking place in Korea's port city of Busan. The leaders have just wrapped up 2 rounds of multilateral talks.
For more, let's go live to our Hwang Seung-hee, who was down in Busan covering the story for us. Seung-hee, what's the latest?
Well, guys, the second session of the multilateral summit was scheduled to end about half an hour ago. We still haven't gotten a word yet whether it has ended, but the leaders were expected to discuss a variety of global security issues, including how to combat climate change and dealing with natural disasters. Now, in her opening remarks for the first session this morning, President Park Geun-hye proposed various ways to boost two-way cooperation between Korea and ASEAN. To name a few, she again called for additional negotiations for further liberalization of the Korea-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. Now, this is something she touched upon yesterday at the Korea-ASEAN CEO Summit. President Park also urged the two partners to expand their political and security cooperation, building on their first ever security dialogue that took place in June. She also vowed to share South Korea's development experience with the region by inviting people from ASEAN countries to share Korea's experience in agriculture development as well as the science and technology sector, guys.
And Seung-hee, what's on the leaders' agenda for the rest of the day now?
Well, in about an hour, the leaders will head over to the Nurimaru, which is the venue for the 2005 APEC summit, for a luncheon. And then at about 3 p.m. Korea time, President Park will hold a joint press conference with the current chair of ASEAN, Myanmar President Thein Sein, where they will announce a joint statement containing a vision for Korea and ASEAN's strategic partnership. Now, this year marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of dialogue relations between Korea and ASEAN, and they will be looking for ways to take their relationship to a new level. And that will wrap up the 2-day summit, guys.
Well, thank you, Seung-hee, for that update. And on the first day of the Korea-ASEAN Summit in Busan, President Park held back-to-back bilateral meetings with 6 leaders from the region.
Yes, and that takes the number of ASEAN leaders the president has met with during their stay in Korea to 9. She's going to meet with the Cambodian leader on Saturday. Now, most of the one-on-one talks were focused on promoting economic cooperation. Choi Sun reports.
After concluding an FTA with Vietnam, the Korean president secured a positive response from her Indonesian counterpart Thursday when she suggested they resume their FTA negotiations. Such bilateral deals are expected to increase the number of Korean firms that can benefit from free trade with ASEAN. As for investments in the region, the Thai Prime Minister promised to allow a Korean company retain priority when Bangkok selects a bidder for part of its $10 billion river management project. President Park first raised the issue to the Thai leader last month after the new government in Bangkok said it would reconsider giving Korea priority. Winning infrastructure construction bids has become a major deal for Korean firms, with the ASEAN closely trailing the Middle East in terms of market size. On regional security, ASEAN leaders were united in voicing concerns about the threat of Pyongyang's nuclear weapons development to world peace and endorsed President Park's efforts to denuclearize the peninsula by way of inter-Korean trust building and non-political cooperation. South Korea, as an aid recipient turned donor nation, pledged to expand development assistance to Laos and customize Korea's Semaul Undong, or modernization of rural communities, to meet the needs of the Southeast Asian country. In addition, Seoul vowed to soon assist the Philippines with recovery efforts in the aftermath of a typhoon in the country, which claimed dozens of lives.
Following a marathon of talks, President Park hosted her ASEAN counterparts and first ladies at a banquet that fused tradition and modernity, representing both Korea and ASEAN. Having reaffirmed their will to boost their cooperative ties, the 11 leaders will meet on Friday to discuss a range of regional and global issues. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News, Busan.
The Korea-Australia Free Trade Agreement goes into effect today, and right away it gives local companies access to government procurements in Australia they've rarely had before. The Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency says the bilateral FTA has opened up Australia's government procurement market, which is worth about $36 billion a year. Up until now, the participation of Korean companies was very low since Australia is not a member of the WTO Government Procurement Agreement. A clause in the Korea-Australia FTA gives them that access, as it won't require local companies to have prior experience in the field. Now, Cho Hyun-ah, the former vice president of Korean Air, isn't just facing a public backlash for her actions on a recent flight from New York to Seoul. She could potentially also be looking at criminal charges. Cho is expected to appear before investigators this afternoon to answer some tough questions about the so-called net rage incident. Kim Min-ji reports.
Korean Air's now former Vice President Cho Hyun-ah will appear before aviation safety inspectors on Friday afternoon. She initially refused to show but changed her mind after prosecutors raided the headquarters of the nation's flagship carrier over concerns of evidence tampering. Prosecutors have also barred her from leaving the country. Cho will be questioned about whether she used abusive language and why she forced the flight she was on to return to the gate to deplane a crew member.
It is important that the airliner cooperates sincerely with the investigation, and we ask that passengers who were on board voluntarily appear for questioning.
Cho was thrust into the international spotlight about a week ago after making a Korean Air flight from New York to Seoul turn back to the gate when a flight attendant served her nuts in the package instead of on a plate, apparently not following protocol. The government is currently investigating whether her actions broke air traffic safety laws or any regulations. The 40-year-old, the eldest daughter of Korean Air Chairman Cho Yang-ho, first stepped down from her duties related to flight services over the backlash, but later offered her full resignation. Jo will reportedly also quit all her positions at the affiliates of Korean Air, but is expected to maintain the shares she currently holds. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Events for the 2018 Winter Olympics will be held in Pyeongchang and only Pyeongchang, declining the International Olympic Committee's suggestion that the Alpine city considers holding some events in other countries. Organizing Committee Chairman Cho Yang-ho said in a statement that the proposal was imprudent. Cho said he appreciated the IOC's cost concerns, but that construction had already begun on all the venues that will host Olympics in Pyeongchang. Cho, who is also the chairman of Hanjin Group and Korean Air, canceled a press conference on that issue that had been scheduled for today, but he will be holding a separate press conference at 1:30 this afternoon Korea time, where he is expected to apologize for his daughter Cho Hyun-ah's actions on a recent flight from New York to Seoul.
Now, South Korea's unification minister has once again reiterated the need to improve inter-Korean relations in the hope that one day the two Koreas can reunify. However, Eoh Jin-joo stressed that South Korea's unification drive is not some kind of shadowy plan aimed at absorbing the North into the South, as Pyongyang has claimed. Park Ji-won reports.
Speaking to reporters in Washington Thursday, South Korea's unification minister Ryu Gil-jae said strained inter-Korean relations in the long term are not beneficial to either side, and the time to change things for the better is now.
Next year will mark the 70th anniversary of the nation's liberation from Japan, and it's time to make a breakthrough in inter-Korean relations.
The minister said President Park Geun-hye's envisioned unification drive is based on the North and South working and growing together. He stressed that South Korea's push to unify the two Koreas is not an attempt to absorb the North. Earlier this year, the South Korean president said unification would be a bonanza for the two Koreas. But North Korea denounced President Park's drive, saying she wants to absorb the North into the South.
I once again want to reiterate that our government's envisioned drive is a peaceful unification, not an absorption plan.
However, Minister Ryu said South Korea cannot turn a blind eye to North Korea's nuclear ambitions and human rights issues. So efforts to solve those issues will go hand in hand with Seoul's drive to improve inter-Korean relations. During his stop in the U.S. capital, the South Korean minister met with various U.S. officials, including Chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee Ed Royce, where he explained South Korea's unification policies and asked for their support. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now back here in South Korea, and private institutions in Seoul forecast that the Korean economy will expand by 3.7% next year. This is the median for 17 private research institutes who also believe the economy will grow at an even slower pace than that of the first 2 quarters of 2015. Foreign investment banks are even more pessimistic. They forecast growth at an average of 3.6% next year. They cite the weak Japanese yen's effect on Korean exports and just overall weak consumer sentiment. All are lower than the 4% goal set by the government and the 3.9% set by the central bank. The United States has developed a new laser gun that could change the way battles are fought and won. Now, this system is currently being tested on a U.S. Navy ship, and the plans call for a full deployment by the year 2020. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Target, locked and loaded. The U.S. Navy's newly developed laser weapon demolishes an enemy target at sea in a training exercise. This time, it locks onto an enemy drone and fires a 30-kilowatt laser. In just 2 seconds, the UAV is taken down. The laser weapon was recently deployed on the USS Ponce in the Persian Gulf for a 4-month test run, and the results, officials say, were phenomenal. It's lifting hopes of a new type of defense against cheap anti-ship arms. The Office of Naval Research says the $40 million laser weapon is the first directed energy weapons system in history. Rear Admiral Matthew Clunder says it is fully operational on the USS Ponce and is used daily in training drills. The deployment of the weapon comes as the Pentagon is worried about losing its technological edge that enabled the U.S. to stay one step ahead of its rivals on the battlefield for decades. Many countries such as China and Iran have developed long-range missiles and accurate anti-ship missiles in recent years. The Navy plans to enhance the power of the laser system to 150 kilowatts, which would theoretically give them the capability to destroy a multi-million-dollar missile for about $1. That more powerful laser is currently in development and is expected to be deployed by 2017. If proven effective, it could be widely produced and integrated on numerous ships. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, amid mounting criticism against the CIA for its torture after the 9/11 attack, the CIA chief has come out to defend his agency. For more on this and a look at other global headlines, return to our Eunice Kim at the News Center.
So, Eunice, this is an extremely rare move by the CIA director. John Brennan said he recognized mistakes were made, but he didn't make any apologies at all for the very brutal techniques that came to light just this week out of that Senate report.
That's right, Mark. He did not call it torture, even as he recognized some tactics were beyond authorization. He also remained vague on whether or not he believed there was any unique and significant intelligence gathered as a result. Our Connie Lee has more.
The director of the CIA defended his agency in a rare TV press conference on Thursday.
The detention and interrogation program produced useful intelligence that helped the United States thwart attack plans, capture terrorists, and save lives.
According to John Brennan, that includes useful information that led to the death of Osama bin Laden. However, on the question of whether some of that information was obtained without the use of brutal torture sessions or enhanced interrogation techniques, otherwise known as EITs, Brennan said that was unknowable.
Let me be clear. We have not concluded that it was the use of EITs within that program that allowed us to obtain useful information from detainees subjected to them.
The director's statements come just 2 days after the U.S. Senate released a report that said the CIA acted more brutally in its torture techniques of detainees after the 9/11 attacks than it previously acknowledged. Some of the brutal methods described in the report were waterboarding, severe beatings, and a method that led to one detainee to freeze to death. Although the CIA chief said the majority of his agents followed legal advice, he did admit that some actions were not authorized.
In a limited number of cases, agency officers used interrogation techniques that had not been authorized, were abhorrent, and rightly should be repudiated by all.
One U.S. lawmaker has called for Brennan to quit, while the United Nations and human rights groups are asking for the prosecution of U.S. officials involved in the CIA program from 2001 to 2007. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, the U.S. military has closed its last detention facility there as it wraps America's war on terror in the country. The U.S. Defense Department said Wednesday's closure of Bagram prison is in line with the deadline drawn up earlier in the year, and that remaining prisoners were now in Afghan custody. This as violence continued to mar the capital of Kabul. On Thursday, a teenager detonated himself during a play at a French-run school. The auditorium was packed for the performance condemning suicide attacks. Kabul police said at least one German was killed and some 20 others were injured. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for this strike. Now, hours earlier, 6 Afghan soldiers were also killed and 11 others wounded when a bus was attacked in the outskirts of the city. Traffic is flowing again where Tent City had once stood. Hong Kong police made good on their promise Thursday to clear out the main protest site in Admiralty, marking an end to at least this chapter of the pro-democracy sit-ins. Some 7,000 officers were deployed to remove barricades and sweep up tents and other debris left behind. They were met with peaceful resistance. 209 people were arrested for obstruction and unlawful assembly, including student leader Nathan Law and media tycoon Jimmy Lai. Demonstrators said this was only the start of their struggle, recognizing that it would be a long road ahead to win their demands for free elections in the territory's leadership polls. And finally, Switzerland will put a pause on an Ebola vaccine trial after a number of participants complained of side effects. The University of Geneva Hospital says that 4 of their 59 test volunteers reported mild joint pain in their hands and feet. Swiss researchers will stop administering the vaccine next week to find out what may have caused these side effects. They also said they'll work with others testing the vaccine in the U.S., Canada, and Germany. The Ebola virus has killed more than 6,000 people in West Africa since early this year.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about 11.
Scientists are still poring over all the data sent back from a landmark spacecraft that landed on a speeding comet in space about a month ago. They've already come to one preliminary conclusion, that the water here on Earth probably didn't come from ancient comets. Kwon-soo explains the initial findings.
Where did the water on our planet Earth come from? That is one of the questions the Rosetta mission is trying to answer. After the European spacecraft's probe made a historic touchdown on Comet 67P last month, now it's bringing us its first discoveries. One of it is the detection of water on the comet. That's no surprise. But a closer look at the results show that the water is very different from that on Earth. That's what's making scientists scratch their heads. Because so far they thought that comets that smashed into the Earth billions of years ago brought a bunch of water to the planet. But Rosetta's chemical analysis shows Comet 67P's water has 3 times more deuterium, a form of hydrogen, than that of water on Earth. That, according to scientists, rules out that comets are the source of Earth's water. They say this makes it more likely that water came from asteroid collisions around 3.8 billion years ago, as asteroids' hydrogen is more similar in terms of their composition. But some say it's too early to eliminate the chances that comets dump the water into the Earth, saying the deuterium to hydrogen ratio varies by comet.
What we can conclude from these results is that water can develop from various different sources, either close to or far away from the sun.
The principal investigator of Rosina, an instrument of the spacecraft, says the comet's high amount of deuterium means the water was formed at very low temperatures, meaning although it doesn't look like it's the water we have on Earth, it's a real treasure chest to explore very early times of our solar system. Kwon-soo, Arirang News.
Now, when you buy a smartphone, chances are the purchases don't stop there. From protective cases and car chargers to Bluetooth headsets, the aftermarket for smartphones is booming, and it's showing very little sign of letting up. Shin Se-min reports.
Virtually everyone has one. These little smartphones that allow us to be connected and to connect. With up to 1.4 billion smartphones having been sold worldwide, it has created another ecosystem that is expanding quite rapidly. From portable rechargers charging the device practically anywhere, to Bluetooth handsets for hands-free phone calls, and smartphone-friendly gloves that allow users to text with gloves in the cold. These are just a handful of the products driving the smartphone accessory aftermarket.
I use a sturdy and fashionable case to help protect my phone, but I'm here to check out some other products, including the Bluetooth-related devices.
This Bluetooth speaker is just one of the products driving the smartphone accessory aftermarket. With just a few taps, the device is hooked up and you're ready to go. According to US-based ABI research, the global smartphone accessory aftermarket is estimated to be worth more than $50 billion by the end of this year. The market for these accessories is increasing despite smartphone shipments dipping as the market reaches maturity. Growth in the smartphone market is forecast to edge down over the next few years to just 6% in 2018. An industry watcher says that while smartphone sales are going one way, the accessory market is on the up and up.
It's not rocket science. Technology is being applied to things we already use. It's not really technical, so they can be created by individuals, and this diversifies the market.
While the analysts think camera-related products and accessories have the biggest room for growth, he says it's just a matter of how big the market will become. Even the industry's biggest players like Samsung and LG Electronics are hoping these kind of innovations will boost their profits even as the smartphone market slows. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It's a cold, windy Friday and will be also a snowy day as well. Clouds have formed in the west, dropping light to heavy snowfall in the western parts of the peninsula, and then it will gradually spread to the other parts of the country today. And some regions in the west could see up to 15 centimeters, while Seoul will just see light flurries less than 1 centimeter this afternoon. And with that in mind, here are the readings for today. The afternoon temperature in the capital will hike up to 1, while Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 5 and 4, and Busan will top out at 6 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju will be getting up to 7, while Daejeon and Dokdo see highs of 1 and 4 respectively. And it seems like this icy cold weather will persist throughout the weekend, with lows nearing -10, so be sure to stay bundled up. That's all for me this week, and let's send it back to Mark and Jin-joo in the studio.
Thank you, Jian, as always. And that brings us to the end of our Friday edition of Newsline at Noon.
Yes, have a wonderful weekend, and please join us again next time at the same time on Monday. Until then, goodbye.